I'm really hoping that this follows me as I sit down because I'm tired now. This is tiring work. I'm giving myself a headache listening to my own voice. I don't know how everyone else is feeling. But anyway, part 2 of Fire, because there's a lot of information that's going on. Okay, so we're going to go straight into it. We're back in Ardalan. Ren and Adrian talk about how they've lost everything, that their people won't accept them for what they've done, even though they're basically playing this like double role, because they're just trying to do what they need to do to save their people, but the people will never know. Ren says it, but Adrian's also thinking it. And then Carl and Adrian go out drinking to gather more information, and then they find this soldier named Jensen who has been to Knoll, which is the furthest point of the deserted peninsula, where he had to protect this tower, and it was just this clock tower. It didn't seem very important, but it's exactly like the clock tower that's in the courtyard in the glass castle. And he also says that his men were going slowly insane because there's also another tower in the north, in Amaroth, in the frozen wastes. Are you seeing where we're going here? Which is what forms the perfect triangle across Aurelia. And then back to Manon. Manon and her 13 get to training and they're flying, but Abrox's wings are still not good. So Manon has to go and find this like spider silk in the mountains. And then when she has this silk, she can get him to help cross the gap. But when she does, he doesn't do that. And then Iskra whips him. Manon attacks Iskra because she's like, don't touch my pest like that. And then Soriel and Astrain, who are Manon's second and third, get her away. Manon puts Abrox in the most miserable hole in the mountain until he'll listen. And then the blue blood heirs, Petra, offers Abrox some meat she caught outside the mountain, but Manon won't accept it. Selena is redoing Rowan's tattoo because obviously she burnt part of it off when she was like in her little angry thing, and then he tells her about his parents who also died, and she tells him about hers, and also about Aiden, so she just remember him, because I was trying to think like how much does she actually remember, but she remembers quite a bit. She also tells him that she doesn't want her crown because of the weight of it, and she doesn't think that she's worthy. So at this point, Selena and Rowan are friends again because they weren't friends when the book started. In fact, it really looked like Rowan despised her, and she him, but mostly Rowan despised her. And then Dorian and Saoirse are like in love or whatever, and then Cole comes to ask Dorian for help, but Dorian confronts him and basically refuses to take his side and says that Cole is a hypocrite for not accepting Selena and Dorian. Cole leaves because what can you say to that, you know what I mean? And then Cole and Aiden go to the apartment, Selena's apartment, to wait for Murto, who's been on a mission in Skulls Bay, and they learn that there's a creature with a black collar there, and he's like really scared Captain Rolf's pirates. I can't speak. And he also learned that the general is in charge of that area is General Narok, who left with his fleet to go to where? Wendelin. Who's in Wendelin? Who's supposed to be in Wendelin? Selena, but she's not. Aiden is also confronts Cole and asks like, whose side are you actually on? And then Cole says that he's only on Dorian's side. Explain that to me, because it doesn't sound like you're on Dorian's side, Queen. Anyway, and then Aiden's like, you have like no reason to be afraid, whereas like my life has been hell this whole time, so you need to like get it together. Like, you've not seen anything, like you don't know the tragedies that some people have gone through. And then in Beltane there's a celebration of spring, and Selena is put in charge of lighting and controlling these 3 giant flame things, and she's really great, but then she starts to burn herself out and actually almost nearly burns herself completely. And then Rowan and 2 other Fae women put her in a bath and try to cool her down. Eventually she calms down, and then that's when Rowan sees the scars on her back for the first time, the one that she got in Endover when she was a slave there, and he gets very, very angry and walks out because Maeve never told him. So this whole time he thought that Selena was just this prissy little brat who became assassin, but he didn't know that she'd been in a slave camp. He eventually calms down, but he gets about territorial about protecting her. Again, a relationship I don't completely understand, but I'm sure I will get there at some point. So he picks her up from her room and lets her sleep in his bed, not just for one night but for the entire stay. You see what I mean? Very suspicious here. I'm a bit confused what's going on. And then she tells him properly about Endover and how she got out. Rowan then keeps her in her bed and he tells her how protective Fae are. And he also tells, he also tells her about the existence of Karanam, Fae who are bonded, who can use each other's magic. Selena tells him, Selena tells him she wants to keep her scars as a reminder that she will eventually free all the slaves from the salt mines, and she can't take her crown because if she does, she will take apart the world. Then it's Selena's birthday and she's finally 19. I keep forgetting how young this flipping character is. She's literally a 19-year-old. Rowan gets her chocolate. End of scene. Then they go back to their lessons in magic and trying to shape her magic and to produce a fire shield. And then Selena also just starts practicing on her own. Back with the witches, Manon still hasn't made the crossing with Aberrock, so her grandmother is like, no, you have to. Otherwise you die, you're not the heir anymore. Aberrock listens to her grandmother being horrible to Manon and he gets protective, so he has to prove a point. So then they're flying. He basically gets over his brat bossiness. Rowan finds Selena has been practicing on her own and he's super impressed. But another body has appeared. By the way, have I said that I think the bodies are demi-fae? Anyway, another bodies happen, but they still don't know what's going on. And then Selena tells Rowan about the creature in the library that she mentioned. Not that she mentioned, that we heard about in Crown of Midnight, which also has the exact same scent as the murder scene, except that one wasn't working properly and these killers must have perfected the creature. I don't know. They return to the site and find the trail to the sea, where they spot a cave filled with 200 mortal soldiers and 3 monster-like creatures in the library. Monsters that are like the ones in the library. And the creatures are in the field with General Narok, who also has a magic collar. Rowan flies in his falcon form. I forgot to say they have forms when they become Fae, and finds that they are planning on attacking the fortress and attacking the demi-Fae. They try to leave, but one of the creatures finds them and follows them, and then the creature basically stumbles into Selena. Oh no, is the one that Selena had met in the field that day when she was having those terrible nightmares. They split up and try to fight him, but the creature sneaks up on her and they have to run for their lives. And then Selena has this crazy plan that involves leading the skinwalkers to her by lighting a fire, and then letting the skinwalkers get the creatures and tear them apart. Anyway, the fortress gets ready to fight. They ask for help from Wendelin, not Maeve, because she wouldn't do it and she would probably just tell Rowan to come back because they have this blood pact and he's her warrior. But Wendelin gets attacked in the north by Ardalan and can't help them. And then some really horrible news reaches the fortress, and that is after the slave uprising in Calcula, Naima's death, the king sends his army to kill every single one of the slaves in both Calcula and Endover. That's horrible. And so Selena leaves and unleashes her fire on the magic wall around the fortress because she's really sad and she needs to channel her power somewhere. Cole is preparing to leave for Aniel, but he still wants to keep Dorian safe. When he leaves, the king tells his council, including Cole and Dorian, that he killed all the slaves. Obviously, they didn't know about it at the time. Dorian wants to get Sorsha out of the castle into safety, but she refuses to leave. Aiden is in mourning because a lot of his people were in those camps, and he was actually protecting them, but they didn't know that, of course. And then the orchestra starts playing songs of Ilwali and Fenharrow and Melisande and Terrasan and Ardalan or something like that, so the king gets all of them killed. Because rebellion. Is it giving President Snow? Yes, it is. And then we also realise that Selena is now very committed to Rowan, will just follow whatever he wants to do. So they continue to set traps around the fortress and pull the monsters in. The army is nowhere, but it's just the 3 creatures. Ignoring Rowan's order, Selena decides to go outside of the magical barrier, and she's going to put up this wall of fire around the fortress. Rowan goes inside, and it turns out that the soldiers have actually snuck inside through a hidden passage because they've been betrayed by Bass, who was one of the scout leaders. Selena then finds that the three dark creatures are actually things called Valag princes, and they're the ones who forged the 3 word keys out of the ward gate all those years ago. And they're surprised to see that Selena has a gold ring, a ruby sword from the mountain cave, which belonged to Athril, who is Maeve's ex-lover, and Brannon Galanthus. I believe that's her dad. I can't remember. Selena keeps fighting them, but they keep nearly overpowering her. Oh, and apparently they cut off her hair. I don't really know if that's true. We must be if I've written it here, but I wrote this a while ago. Anyway, and then Rowan's friends, the other 5 warriors, they arrive working for Maeve, but none of them help as they race inside to help Rowan instead, except for Gabrielle, who has seen her before. They take over from Rowan to kill all of the soldiers, but then Rowan goes outside and Selena is swallowed up in like this big darkness cloud, and his friends keep him from going to her because he would also go insane. The Valag love Selena's misery and keep her alive, going through horrible memories over and over again. So now, flashback, we go back. Aelin is a child waiting at the palace in Orinth, where the King of Ardlan has come for a visit with Dorian. So full circle, she actually saw Dorian when she was younger. At the dinner, the king tries to push because he has magic, but obviously nobody knows that, Aelin's brain, and she nearly burns out, and she's like going crazy in pain, but nobody actually knows that it was the king who did this. Anyway, and then Aelin's parents, Ro and Evelyn, so Brannon's was her other relative, anyway, not her dad. Anyway, Ro and Evelyn travelled to their summer home to get rest for Aelin. Her mother gives her an amulet of Orathin, which is an heirloom from Brannon to protect her, and then that night is the night when her parents are murdered, and Aelin wakes up covered in blood. She was protected by Lady Marion, who is her mother's best friend and handmaiden, who made her flee and then sacrificed herself. She is also the wife to her husband Cal Locken and his daughter Elodie. Feel like they might be important, but I can't remember. But they are butchered by the creature who slaughtered Aelin's parents. Aelin runs away, but a bridge has been cut, so she falls into the river, and that is the same river that Arobin Hamel found her all those years ago. Anyway, it was Lady Marion's sacrifice that broke Aelin completely, because it ended up being all in vain. She sacrificed herself and left her daughter Elodie and her husband Cal for nothing, because Aelin never actually became queen. But then she starts seeing on the faces of all the people that she loved, and they give her strength to rise up. And then she sets the Valag on fire, and she burns 2 of them immediately, but then her powers are obviously weak, and she can't kill Narek and the last one. So Rowan comes to her rescue and offers his own magic, because they are now Karam, in case you didn't clock that, Karanam, and she burns them all, and then right before he dies, Narek shows her a flash of the future and what it could very well become now that she has taken her very rightful identity. And then Cole goes to tell Dorian what he's discovered about the king's magic, and also to let him know that he's picked a side, and that's Dorian's side. And they go to test Cole's theory, which is by putting these 3 crystals in a bowl in the middle of the room, and then Dorian uses his magic to connect the crystals, and the water freezes, and when he knocks over one of the crystals, it unfreezes. So basically that's how the king's magic froze. The triangle of magic freezing crosses to Morath, where Duke Parrington lives, and where he bought Roland and Caitlin, and then the Ferian Gap, which is where they keep hearing wings, aka the wyverns. Selena finally gets out of bed after Rowan let her sleep for many a day, and they go to the forest pool, and then she realises where the final word key is, and that it's in the amulet of Orinth, which protected her and her family for ages. Brannon got it from the site of Malala's temple, Marla's temple, and when Arobin found her, he had taken the amulet from her. Rowan asks her what's up, but she won't tell him because he's bound to Maeve by blood oath, so she doesn't want to tell him anything that he could give back to her. But then she tells him her entire life story and also manages to conjure one tiny drop of water affinity being in her blood from Mab's line, her mother's line. The fire comes from Brannon Galanthius, so she actually has this dual power thing. And then they get ready to travel to Doranel because she's now gained Rowan's approval. She says goodbye to the Demi-Fae and promises that they will all have a home in Terrasen because they don't have a home anywhere else except for the fortress. Mortal gets ready to travel to Surya, but then he finds out that Aelin is alive. The news of her battle with the Valog has travelled quickly, and now everyone in Ardalan knows that Aelin Galanthius, or however you say her name, is alive. And Morto travels north and sends word to all the countries to tell them to hold on because Aelin will come home, and that's what they've all been relying on. Ren is to stay in Rifthold to work from there, and the king is obviously outraged. Selena and Rowan travel to Doranel, a city built entirely of stone, and when they enter the palace, Maeve asks Selena to show the power, but Selena's like, I need answers first. Maeve tells her about the word keys they can't be destroyed, only put back in the gate, and no one knows how to do that. And then she tells Selena about the Valag, and which are many different creatures, and about Valag princes who take over different bodies. She also tells Selena that Brennan wasn't royal born, but was loved by Marla and Marla the sun goddess. The mark on Selena's brow that occasionally shows, which I think they mentioned it in the first book when she was in a battle with Cain, is actually a bastard's mark. Whoops. Burning them or cutting off the heads of the Valag is the only way to kill them. She kind of already knew that though, so maybe you're a bit late. Back to the keys. If the king of Ardalan would have all three, he would be invincible. Maeve knows that Selena knows where the last key is, but she obviously refuses to tell Maeve. So then Maeve is going to torture Rowan to trick her into telling her, but Rowan tells her not to, and then, dun dun dun, Selena set the world on fire. She lit up the entire city with her fire, although she didn't actually burn anyone. And then Selena tells Maeve what she's figured out through the stories that Emrys had told, that Maeve didn't give the keys to Brennan but wanted them for herself. Her love for Athriel fought against her, and her beloved, I was supposed to say, Athriel fought against her, so she killed him, so clearly she didn't love him that much. And then Brennan took the keys and burned every trace so she wouldn't find him. He hid one of the keys in his heirloom so Maeve wouldn't find them. Then Selena shows Maeve the memory that Narok gave her, a flash of the future in which she is king. She also shows Maeve the ring that she found in the sword that belonged to Athriel, and the ring that would have belonged to Maeve one day had she not killed him. She exchanges the ring for Rowan's freedom. Rowan then binds himself to Selena. That's crazy. Can't wait for Cole to come back and see that. Jealousy is going to hit the mother roof. They escape Dornell, and then Selena lets Rowan tattoo the stories of her parents and uncle and Lady Marion, of her country and her people, of Naima and Sam, of the scars on her back, onto the scars on her back. She also finally is able to mourn them after all these years and prays that they are safe, and then she starts singing songs of her household. How she has suppressed it and not forgotten them over all these years, I cannot tell you. Then we have the Witches' War Games, in which each witch clan has to protect their own egg and steal the others. Iskra lets her wyvern kill the wyvern of Petra, the Blue Blood's heir. The wyvern dies, but Manon and Abrox manage to save Petra. Manon knows she was born without a heart and a soul, but she saw how Petra's wyvern had tried to save her, so she decided to help. Of course, the Iron people, the Iron Teeth, whatever, win the games, and Manon is proclaimed wing leader. Her grandmother is furious though that she saved Petra, and as punishment she makes her kill Cochrane Witch that they have been holding captive. The Cochrane Witch, with her blood red cloak, tells Manon that she pities her that she is not born but made a monster. Manon kills her because of her grandmother, but she does actually regret it. Cole and Aedion are Aiden, I don't know how to say these names, are trying to figure out what to do, and then Cole realizes that while Selena will always pick him, Aelin will not. Sad times for him, but also he's not really been doing that. And then the king summons Aiden, Cole, Dorian and Saoirse. Dorian tries to get Saoirse out the castle, but her co-worker Amethy has reported them. The king tries to find out what Cole and Aiden have been doing, and Dorian claims he doesn't know. The king asks them who the traitor in the castle was. Cole is about to take the blame when Aiden sacrifices himself. The king locks him up but doesn't kill him because he wants to use him as a trap for Aelin. Because obviously Aelin is now definitely alive. They've all figured that out. The king then tells them that Saoirse is the true traitor. She kept sending letters to her friends, who later turns out to be Ren, telling him of the king's every move. She never told him about Dorian, though. Amethy found one of these letters and reported her to the king. Saoirse confesses to everything, hoping that by doing so she will spare Dorian's life. She does, but the king beheads her. This is what I mean. Any character I think that's important never ends up being important because they just flip and die. Anyway, that's why I wasn't that invested in her in the recap. Then Cole decides to do something. He tells the king he is quitting, that he will not go to Aniel because he will only serve Dorian. So this is like another blood blonde type situation, but just not blood blonde. Anyway, the king has his men shoot him, but Dorian's not having any of that, and his magic erupts. Dorian tells Cole to flee, and he does, but not before telling him that he loves him. Sis, we knew that from literally the first. I knew that literally from the first like chapter of the first book. Anyway, the king overpowers Dorian with his power and puts one of the black collars on his neck. Not great. Carl gets Fleetfoot, who is Selena's dog, and flees through the tunnels in her room, but not before telling the door knocker Mort where he will be and to get Damaris, which is Gavin's sword, from the tomb. He goes to Selena's apartment, and together with Ren, he decides to free Aiden and Dorian. Man and the 13 are then sent to Morath to serve the Duke, and the rest of the witches stay in the Ferian Gap. And then Cole dumps his captain of the guard sword in the Avery River. So Selena prepares to go back to Adelant to start her fight. Rowan can't come with her because since his magic is still frozen, he wouldn't be like this great Fae warrior there, or a falcon. So they say goodbye. It was really sad. And then Selena then decides to take her real identity, that she is Aelin Ashfire Galanthius, and that she will not be afraid. So what a cute little time for them, I guess. So cute. So cute. I feel like I need to do a recap of the recap. Like, that was crazy.